Everyone, so this time I am going to show you how to compute a test assumption using a paired t-test by hand. But first, let me tell you what is paired t-test and when are we going to use it. So paired t-test is also called as paired sample t-test or dependent sample t-test that tells you how significant the differences between groups are. In other words, it lets you know if those differences could have happened by chances. And it is also where you run a test on dependent samples. Then choose the paired t-test if you have two measurements on the same item, person, or thing. You should also choose this test if you have two items that are being measured with a unique condition. And furthermore, choose paired t-test if the distribution of the differences between pairs of scores is approximately normally distributed. So for example, we are going to compare for the differences between two scores. So null hypothesis always negates the given statement, while the alternative hypothesis is the difference also. Alternative hypothesis is the contrast of null hypothesis. So our null hypothesis is there is no difference between two means, while alternative hypothesis is there is significant differences between the two mean scores. After this, I am going to show you the data we are going to compute. Please prepare a scientific calculator, a ball pen or any writing materials that you can use, and a paper, of course, that you can solve. Here is the following data that we are going to use to calculate a paired test by hand. We have subject 1 to 11, a first score represented by X, second score is represented by Y. Following data, the first step that we must do is subtract each Y score to the X score. Here is another column. So, 3 minus 20 is equal to negative 17. 3 minus 13 is negative 10. 3 minus 13 is negative 10. Then 12 minus 20 is negative 8. 15 minus 29 is negative 14. 16 minus 32 is negative 16. And 17 minus 23 is negative 6. 19 minus 20 is negative 1. 23 minus 25 is negative 2. Then 24 minus 15 is positive 9. And lastly, 32 minus 30 is positive 2. Step, using a scientific calculator, we are going to add up all of the values from step 1. So here, we are going to add all this value. So negative 17 until down there is equal to negative 73. This step is the third step. Using again the scientific calculator, we are going to square the differences from step 1. So we are going to square this part and write it on the next column. So negative 17 times negative 17 is equal to 269. Then the square of negative 10 is 100. And so there. Then negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. The square of negative 14 is 196. The square of negative 16 is 256. And square of negative 6 is 36. Square of negative 1 is 1. Square of negative 2 is 4. Square of positive 9 is 81. And so square of positive 2 is 4. Fourth step is we are going to add up all of the square differences from step 3. So adding all of this data is equal to 1,131. 5 is we are going to compute for the t-score using this formula. This is a formula for t-score. So t is equal to the sum of the differences of sum of x minus y from the step 2 that we had earlier over n. N is the total number of subjects. Yeah, that's right. Over square root of sum of the squared differences from step 4 minus sum of the differences from step 2 squared over n. Over n minus 1 times n. From step 1 to 4, we had the sum of the differences of sum of x minus y from step 2 is equal to negative 73. We got 1,131 on the sum of the squared differences from step 4, while if we are going to compute for the sum of the differences from step 2 squared, negative 73 squared is equal to 5,329. The next is we are going to solve for the t-score, right? Next, let us substitute for this. The sum of the differences of x minus y is equal to negative 73 over n, which is 11, and then the square root of the sum of the squared of the differences from step 4, which is 1,131 minus the squared of sum of the differences from step 2, which is negative 73 squared over n over n, which is 11 minus 1 times 11. I mean 11. Yeah, 11 is equal to, get your calculator, then let us solve this t-score. Negative 73 over 11 divided by the square root of 1,131 minus 5,329 over 11 divided by 110, which is 10 times 11. So the answer is we got negative 2.74. Okay. Step 6, we are going to subtract 1 from the sample size to get the degrees of freedom. So degree of freedom is equal to sample size is 11 minus 1, so degree of freedom is equal to 10. Okay. Next step is step 7. We're going to find the p-value in the t table. Here's the t table using the degrees of freedom in step 6. So our degrees of freedom is 10, and we are going to use for the alpha 5%, 10. We're going to find for 10, which is 10 is 2.28. Yeah, here it is, 10 there. Okay, and finally for the last step 8, let's compare our t-table value. Here is t-table value from step 7 to our calculated t-value, which is negative 2.74. So the calculated t-value is greater than, it is greater than, even though it is in negative sign, because let's set aside the sign. So 2.74 is greater than 2.228. So it means we can reject the null hypothesis that there is no difference between mean. So null hypothesis is rejected because of that data. It says that 2.74 is greater than 228, I mean rather. So if it is greater than, then we had to reject the null hypothesis and accept for the alternative hypothesis. Okay. That's all. Thank you for watching. Till next time.